answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Put the kids to bed. Turn down the lights. Close the door. Now, buckle in and open your mind for the Roundtable Podcast with your hosts, Shogun and Rhodesian.
Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. Today we're doing a special event on a current event, which is Brexit. I guess Brexit has gone through. It has been approved. It's going to happen. I honestly don't know much about this, so we're going to get into it. But before we do, check us out on the Roundtable on Discord. You can find us through the conspiracy section of Discord. You can check out our website. Our social media should be on all platforms. And that being said, is there anyone here who actually knows anything about Brexit? Because I honestly haven't cared enough to follow this story that much, but I know it's a big deal.
Well, I can give you a Scottish perspective.
Please do, sir. Are you going to give it to us?
Yeah. I was just waiting for your response. Yeah, well, I personally think that the UK could be dismantled because of Brexit. I think that Brexit is a death warrant for the United Kingdom.
Why do you think that?
Well, Scotland voted to remain and England voted to leave, so I don't think that the UK will be able to survive.
But why wouldn't they be able to survive? I believe the only reason that they wouldn't do Brexit was because of the common market. I mean, they already have their own currency, and it's really powerful. You know, they were using euro and the British pound, and now
Yeah, but what you have to understand, the Americans and the Europeans have been accommodating the UK pound. There'd be no reason for the Americans or the Europeans to accommodate the UK pound anymore if the UK is no longer in the European Union.
Okay, well, I would say that now that they're independent and they have just their own base currency and they don't have to worry about using the other currencies, they would still do business, free trade, a lot, like quite a bit of trade with England. So I don't see how that would be a problem. Like it seems like they would be able to, broker their own deals quite, a lot more efficiently because they're not, subjugated to the rules of the EU anymore.
Yeah, but they won't have the same economic, political negotiating power like they did within the European Union. Basically what is going to happen is there's going to be a de facto union between America and the UK, and the UK is going to be a junior partner, whereas when they were in the European Union, they were one of the strongest members of the European Union. So why go from a strong member of the EU to a junior partner under America? It just does not make sense.
Maybe.
Wait, what suggests that the UK would be a junior partner, and what suggests that they had full representation in the EU?
The European Union has a population of 500 million people. America has a population of 350 million people, whereas England has a population of 50 million people. You cannot compare the EU or the United States to, England. It just can't be compared.
So then why are you saying the UK would be a junior member then if you can't compare them?
That's what I'm saying. You can't compare England to the EU. America and Europe are in the same league, whereas England is basically in the third division.
From what I understand, this was a democratic decision by the people. They voted twice to be, exited from the EU. It's the people, their voice is what matters, and they feel that they don't want to be in the EU. Supposedly, the EU's governed by a commission that's unelected. They have an unelected court. And the only thing that is elected is the parliament, and supposedly they don't have any actual power. And you can't impeach, a commissioner or an elected or an unelected official of the court. So like you just if they were corrupted or if they did things incorrectly, they don't really have to listen to the people. You have to do what they tell you to do. And that's anti-democratic, and I think that's the real reason why they decided to go through with the Brexit.
I don't agree that it's undemocratic. The reason why we have a commission is because the European Union is not a sovereign state. Right? Every 28 members are sovereign states, and every government appoints their own commissioner. So there's a British commissioner representing the UK as a sovereign state. So to say that it's undemocratic is a falsehood. It's a nonsense. The UK is a sovereign state. It had the power to veto. It could veto regulations from the EU. It chose not to. So I don't see how it's undemocratic when all the power was within the government of the UK.
Okay.
Right, does Scotland meet all the criteria to join the EU?
It meets all the criteria, but only one criteria it does not meet is being an independent country. So if it wants to join the EU, it would have to dissolve the union with England and then rejoin as an independent member state. You can't have a part of a sovereign entity be inside the EU and another part to be outside. You have to actually dissolve the sovereign entity, and that is highly likely because support for independence in Scotland will rise to about maybe 60 to 70% because of Brexit.
Right, why not just have special trade deals with the EU like Norway and Switzerland? Why would you want to become a full member?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing with Norway. Norway is a de facto member of the EU. It's not technically a member, but the thing with Norway is it has to align with all the regulations with the European Union. It has to respect EU law, even though it's not a member of the EU.
And a reason that people would like to join the EU is economic reasons for the most part. I think you get, I think in the case of, I believe it was Ireland, they actually got aid packages or some kind of financial aid to their economy, and that boosted them up in the Celtic Tiger, in the early 90s, was it?
No, that's a misinterpretation. The EU has never gave aid packages to Ireland. The reason why Ireland had an economic meltdown was because of its own government spent more money than what Ireland had, and the bailout, they went to the Troika and got a bailout, but they have to pay that back. So it's not aid; it's basically a loan that they have to pay back.
I wasn't referring to post the meltdown. I'm talking to what started the economic boom in Ireland.
Yeah, what caused the economic boom was low interest rates and people accumulating debt. What the Irish boom was people accumulating debt and getting credit, getting wealth on credit. And then when the economic meltdown happened, those Irish people had to pay their debts and they couldn't afford to. And the governments had to bail out the banks.
Ah.
Well, you guys were talking about trade. More than 50% of everything that Britain produces goes to the European Union. And Britain turns around and subsidizes farmers within the EU, all right, so that they're competitive against their own markets. It's kind of like throwing money to another country so they're competitive with you. It's a weird practice.
Yeah, well, the statistics were released, and they reckon that the UK has paid £250 billion to the EU over the past 40 years, and within the past 4 years to leave the EU, the UK has paid £210 billion. within 3 years to leave it. So basically, it costs more money to leave the EU than what it does to remain.
What about immigration quotas? Is that set by England, or would that be set by the EU?
EU.
Well, no, that's another absurdity too. That what we had is a lot of propaganda. You understand? The UK and Ireland are not members of what is known as the Schengen area. So when someone comes from the EU, right, they have to have a job in England or Scotland. They can't just turn up and arrive without any documentations. There is passport restrictions, but the propaganda by the Leave campaign tried to portray that the UK was in the Schengen area. And if you were to Google the Schengen area, you will clearly see that the UK is not in the Schengen area. So they're not obligated to follow EU regulations on immigration.
That's cool. And what do you think about the fact that despite being 7% of the world's population, European Union and Europe as a whole pays 50% of the world's welfare?
Sorry, say that again?
Despite being 7% of the world's population, European Union or Europe in general accounts for the 50% of the welfare in the world.
I don't know about that figures. I've never heard of that before.
I, for one, think that Brexit's a good thing for the UK, and I think it will increase the likelihood of a reunification of Ireland. Because Northern Ireland, I believe, if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong there, that Northern Ireland voted to remain in the EU because they wanted to. But I hope that there will be a referendum, especially with a growing Catholic majority there.
That's another question I have. Is Northern Ireland on the same pay level as Southern Ireland or the rest of Ireland? I mean, do they produce as much money as they use, or would they tank Southern Ireland if they were to rejoin? I mean, Northern Ireland and Ireland, if they were to rejoin, would they tank the economy of Ireland?
I honestly couldn't say in regards to economic standards. I just know for a fact that there is a growing Catholic majority compared to the Protestant shrinking. Catholics have more kids, and as I understand it, the Catholics there, probably varying by person, would like to remain in the EU and are weighing the options of having that referendum per the Good Friday Agreement and potentially reunifying Ireland.
Well, Northern Ireland, the economy of Northern Ireland is significantly weaker than the economy of the Republic of Ireland. And basically, like, Northern Ireland's population is like 1.5 million people, whereas Southern Ireland's population is 4 million people. So, of course, Southern Ireland's economy is going to be larger. But then what you can do is you can compare the reunification of Germany. East Germany was significantly weaker than West Germany. And when those two entities reunified, the West German economy did take a tanking for a short period of time, and possibly that might be the same in Irish reunification. The Southern Irish economy might suffer in the short term, but in the long term, Irish reunification is beneficial to both parts of that country.
But there's still social divide between East Germany and West Germany. East Germany is still the impoverished sector. It is still not nearly as built up as West Germany. East Germany had a population of about 18 million to West Germany 60 million. I mean, again, comparing these countries, it's comparisons don't always work out. They're not always comparable. There were vastly different religions. That you got to look at the Lutherans versus Catholics and Protestants. There's a lot more to take in than just the fact that they've rejoined.
Well, I don't know that's a good comparison, West Germany, East Germany, to Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, because one was under the Soviet Union, which was pseudo-communist, and the other is a capitalist. Both Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland are still capitalist countries. The main divide between the two is, as I see it, two things. Mainly, one is Catholic, the other is Protestant, which is plenty of religious divide there. And then the other is that a lot of Northern Irish citizens identify as British, while the majority of almost Republican Island, they identify as Irish. There's a big difference there, but I think those are the main two divides. But there's plenty of people that work on either side of the border and cross it daily. I think that's a big difference compared to East Germany and West Germany back in the day.
Yeah, I didn't say you can like compare it in exact terms. I said similar, and what I was meaning is you have a wee small part of a country rejoining a big part, and that's the point I was making. East Germany was a small part of Germany rejoining West Germany, and that's what will be similar. Is it in the short term, the big economy will suffer, but in the long term, it will be good. But understand, East Germany is still weaker, but it's one country. Germany is one country, and it should be unified. And Ireland is one country, and that should be unified.
So getting off topic, back to Brexit. More on Brexit. That's what I want to hear. Not to be rude. So what about? I've heard a lot about English ideals being overrun by the European Union.
Well, that's another thing. That's another falsehood. You understand? Because who created the single market? That was a conservative English government that created the whole idea of the single market. I think it was Margaret Thatcher that introduced that idea. So, and the Parliament too was an idea for the English in origin. So England over the past 40 years have contributed in actually forming the European Union. So to say that somehow the European Union is foreign to English British ideas is a nonsense in my opinion.
So I take it you were a Remainer?
Yes, I'm a Remainer. I believe we should have more unity in the world, less division.
I mean, I'm of the same opinion, honestly. I think, if anything, they should have been looked to work out the problems within the European Union than just leaving it and abandoning. But on the same turn, I'd like to see a unified Ireland, and I think the longer the UK was in the EU, potentially decrease that chance.
Why do you want to see a reunification of Ireland? And I understand, well, you could. The Irish question can be related to Brexit because Brexit will cause Scottish independence and Irish reunification, and I understand it will make it highly likely. But I think the person wants to speak about Brexit and not the indirect topics of Brexit.
My apologies.
I guess I would like to ask, what's the worst thing that could happen to England after this happens? After the 11 month period, transitional period, what do you think is the worst that could happen?
That they don't get what they want. See, the problem is like trade deals with the European Union takes at least 5 years. Like I think the Canadian deal took 9 years to conclude. And Boris Johnson believes that he can conclude a trade deal with the European Union within a year. So that means the quicker you conclude a trade deal, the more aligned you will be to European Union regulations. Right? And it's already been said by the European Union that it is highly unlikely that the UK will be able to conclude a trade deal with the EU within a 1 year period, because what happens is, like I'm saying to you, the EU is not this undemocratic entity. All the national parliaments, all 27 member states, all the democratically elected parliaments have to approve everything the European Union does. So what will happen is the UK and the EU will conclude a trade agreement, and then every single member state every legislature of the member states will have to approve that. And that could take maybe 2 years to do, right, at least. So what will happen is, within a year, the UK might actually have to completely leave the EU with no trade deal, because a trade deal won't be able to be concluded, and then the UK will fall on WTO regulations, and that will severely crucify the UK economy, and the pound currency would dramatically decrease in valuation.
So, I think another reason they're doing the Brexit is an attempt to fix their economy. I agree. I can't see how they're going to be able to make a trade deal within 11 months, because they're not even saying it like a full 12 months. It's like 11 months they have before, they're up for the other regulation, the default regulation. So yeah, I guess I just have to agree that just seems like a really just poor move on their part. Unless they've been, thinking about it. Maybe they've already have all the, the angles thought out long in advance before they, did the vote for the Brexit, because they were expecting it. And that actually brings into question, like, it won by 52%, with 48% wanting to stay in the Brexit. I wasn't aware of that, and it seems like that's like they barely won that decision, and it makes me wonder, like, the legitimacy of that legitimacy of that vote, because it just doesn't make any economical sense for them to do that. Like, man.
But that's what I'm saying. You can't qualify a majority within a democracy. So what is a majority? So you're basically saying a 51%, 49% majority is not good enough, but somehow a 70% majority. See, the thing is, the majority won, and whether we like it or not, we have to accept democracy. And the reason why the Leave campaign won was because of propaganda and deceit politics from the United Kingdom Independence Party and some elements within the Conservative Party.
I mean, it is true that they won by majority vote, but it is not true to say that the majority of the country voted for that specific thing to pass. That's simple math right there. If it was 70-30, then yes, the majority of the country voted to keep it. If it's 48 and 52, no. That's a damn near split down the middle decision. Same thing that happened with the Donald Trump-Hillary Clinton election. It was almost damn near split down the middle. Majority of the country didn't vote for Hillary, and a majority of the country didn't vote for Donald Trump. Literally half and half.
Yeah, but what happens? So, see, when you qualify majorities, what will happen is the status quo, like the stalemate, will always happen, and you'll never get anything done if that's the case. It's just what we do is we work in a democracy where the majority wins, and it doesn't matter the percentage, as long as they're the majority, they win, and that's it.
So when's the next Scottish referendum?
Well, they reckon it could be this year. It could maybe November, September this year, maybe, possibly. It depends. It just depends on what happens in the trade negotiations. But the First Minister of Scotland was speaking today, and she recommends that at the end of the year there will be a referendum. And if Boris Johnson continues to refuse, this might end up in our Supreme Court, and it could be the greatest constitutional case in the history of the UK.
How long's it been since you've been independent?
Scotland is from, was it 1850 to 1707, so Scotland was an independent country for over, 800 years, and then we entered a union with England 300 years ago. So we've been in a union with England for 300 years, and we've been an independent country for about maybe 800 years before that.
And I say, let democracy go. Have at it.
Well, personally, I wouldn't be that in favour of Scottish independence myself. As you see, I'm a Scottish federalist. I would like the United Kingdom to reconfigure itself into a federation like you Americans with your House of Representatives and your Senate. I think we should adopt that system in the UK.
All right, you want to go from unitary to a federalist system. I understand.
Maybe Brexit is opportunity, man, that will reconfigure, because there is a grievance, because Scotland voted to remain, Northern Ireland voted to remain, England and Wales voted to leave, so 2 countries of the UK voted to leave and 2 countries voted to remain. So because of the unitary system and because England has a greater population, then we have Brexit, so they might have to reconfigure the constitutional arrangements of the United Kingdom. So Brexit could be a blessing in disguise for Scotsmen and Irishmen.
Oh heck yeah. Does anyone know what the view of Jersey and Guernsey are? The islands closest to the rest of Europe?
They're not in the European Union, they're crown dependencies. No, sorry, they're not in the UK, so they weren't in the European Union. They were crown dependencies out with the UK jurisdiction and European Union jurisdiction.
So what all does that entail as far as Brexit goes? Will they not feel any difference?
Nothing. They were never in the UK. They're never in the European Union. They're just a small island of 50 million people. And the reason why they weren't allowed to be in the EU was the English were scared in case all the Europeans started populating these islands and making them into European islands. So the reason why they restricted immigration. See, this is what I'm trying to say to you. The UK had the sovereignty and had the ability to restrict immigration within the limits of the European Union. They did it with all its islands, like Guernsey, Jersey, and the Isle of Man. So they could have easily have restricted immigration within the limits of the European Union. They chose not to, and they chose to use it as a grievance to leave.
What do you think about the rise of populism going across Europe?
I think populism is a nonsense. You understand? I don't think there is any populism. What's going to happen? They're trying to make it that Donald Trump's election was the end product of populism. If you look at the American system, what you have is you have Democratic presidents that are in for 2 terms, and then a Republican president will be in for about 2 terms. So it was basically the Republican government were going to be voted in. A Republican president was always going to be voted in my opinion. It just happened to be Trump because the Americans had 2 terms of a Democratic president. And that's the same within the UK. We have Labour governments for maybe 10 years, and then we have a Conservative government for 10 years. So I think this populism is just an exaggerated nonsense.
The whole trend of presidents getting elected 2 terms is a very recent trend. Yeah, we had Bush Sr. for 1 term and Reagan before him, and Carter and Nixon. 1 term is the standard. It's just been 2 terms as of late.
Yes, yeah, maybe that. Yeah, I'm only referring to the past 20 years. So yeah, I understand. Back in the day, you had Nixon, and then you had Carter, and then you had Reagan. What was Reagan? Did Reagan not have 2 terms? No.
Yeah, Reagan had 2 terms. And then his vice president was elected for 1 term, and then we had Bill for 2 terms, and Bush for 2 terms, and Obama for 2 terms, and it seems we may have Trump for 2 terms.
Yeah, well, that's like, for example, I would be like a Bernie Sanders. I like Bernie Sanders. I'd be a centre left social democratic, and I like Bernie Sanders, but I have to condemn the elite Democrats over this impeachment. I think it's a nonsense impeaching Donald Trump because he won an election and he might win a second term. So you're going to impeach him? Nah, I disagree with that.
I get knocked up again, but I want to continue on this thought real quick. I think the only reason they're trying to impeach Trump is that Bernie Sanders is a senator, and that pulls him off the campaign trail because he has to be in the Senate while the impeachment's going on. I think it has nothing to do with Trump. I think it's about Bernie Sanders taking the lead in the polls, and they're trying to rein him in, keep him from getting the nomination.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe it is a possibility. But like Brexit, see, there's no English people. Is there any English people in here? No.
So, is there anything else you guys want to say on Brexit, or have you guys picked this phone already?
Well, the thing is, I can only give you a Scottish perspective, and I voted Remain. So, I'm saying I can only give you opinions against Brexit, and they would only be interpreted as grievances. If there was an English person that actually voted for Brexit, it would give a different perspective, but I don't think there is an English person who voted for Brexit in this podcast.
I'm glad that you at least could give us a Scottish perspective, because I couldn't really give you any perspective at all on this one, so this has been helpful. So, that being the case, last chance for comments, questions, anything before we wrap up another episode? All right, well, thanks very much to the recorders. Thank you to Scottish Federalist for covering the Brexit angle for us today. Thank you to everyone for the live audience, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Roundtable. Don't forget to check us out on Discord. Find us through Discord on conspiracy theories, or search Google the Roundtable Discord. You can find our website, podcast on YouTube, the Roundtable Podcast, and we're on Patreon, GoFundMe. Find us on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And thanks, everybody. We'll catch you later. And now let's jump down to the regular chat, please.